Welcome to the Box Score Sports Podcast.
Yep.
Okay, give me your bad of week 2.
So there's a lot to pick from. I went with the Jags just because it's like they kind of remind me of what the Lions were and hopefully aren't still, but where they have a kind of a bad history and there's times where they're supposed to be good and they just don't live up to what they're supposed to be. And then they bring Peterson and it's like, okay, here's a proven coach, recently won a Super Bowl. He's got a good quarterback with Lawrence. They got good receivers. They got a good running back. Their defense is halfway decent. And it's like, again, they just are not looking the way that they should look. I mean, they started out last week the way that you expected them to against the Dolphins. First half, I'm like, yes, this is what I expected the Jaguars to look like this year. And then, as you know, they totally just fell apart. And I don't know if that hurt them psychologically, but the fact that they came out and just looked horrible against the Browns, who just got embarrassed against the Cowboys last week. And, Watson looked like he's totally incompetent quarterback. And you get beat by a team like that I don't know. I'm very frustrated with them because I like rooting for them, but I have no idea why they cannot live up to the potential of what the sum of all their parts are. They should be a good team and they're just not. At least they don't look like it.
No, I agree. Trevor Lawrence, I think, had 16 yards passing in the first half. How does that happen, right? You got to be better, whether it's play calling or Trevor Lawrence. I talked to Luke yesterday. He thinks the play calling's horrible. Lawrence he wasn't saying Lawrence was playing great though either. He said 16 yards is inexcusable. The defense actually played pretty good. The fact they only ran the ball 13 times, averaged 4 yards a carry, and only, it was a close game. I think they probably should have ran the ball a little bit more. Maybe they could have got some momentum doing that. But, and then the Brian Thomas, I don't know why they don't use him more. He seems to pop every time he gets the ball passed to him. He had two receptions and only 4 targets. Now the only thing I will say is, a small defense is that, Evan Ingram was scratched at game time. So maybe that threw off what they wanted to do. It was a wrinkle because he was their best weapon last year. But it's still not a good excuse for why your offense, because it's not even really the defense. I thought even the defense played pretty, really against Miami. The only time the defense truly failed was when Tyreek ran the ball 80 yards, but there's only one receiver in the NFL that can do what Tyreek did on that play, other than that, the defense has been really good this year. So it's the offense that's really been a letdown, and Peterson's got to figure that out. Otherwise, who knows if he'll have a job at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I mean, Lawrence, he really doesn't have any excuses. There's a lot of quarterbacks out there that I feel really bad for because they're put in really difficult situations. I'll give you one example. Baker Mayfield, I really liked him coming out of college, but it's what do you expect of any quarterback that has a different offensive coordinator or coach every single year? Mm-hmm. Every year they're learning a new playbook, they're learning new schemes, they're learning new cadences, and then now look what happened with Baker. He's on his second year of finally first time in his career. He's got the same coordinator, the same players around him, and he looks like a totally different quarterback. And it's Trevor Lawrence hasn't had that issue. I mean, I know he had a horrible coach with Meyer and, now you have Peterson, but it's he's been around the same team the whole time. He hasn't had everything change around him. So there's no reason that he shouldn't, he's at that point where he should almost be peaking, in the NFL. And now it's not learning anymore. Now it's just perfecting your technique. And he's not at all even close to that, which is alarming. It's just weird. I mean, he looks good. He has a good arm. He has good throws. He makes good decisions. But I don't know. He just is not a quarterback that seems like he's going to go out there and win you a game.
Yeah, right now we got to see more. I will say, I've watched enough Jaguars game to know that the play calling is pretty bad, at times. But he's there's quarterbacks, generational quarterbacks or quarterbacks that are really good to great. They get beyond that, right? Matthew Stafford, all those years with the Lions. He had Matt Patricia as a coach for a long time. He still put up numbers. he
Yep.
looked good even though they lost. Like there's like Trevor Lawrence hasn't looked good at times when they lose. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
he's got to figure out how he needs to look good even despite what's around him.
Well, and where you can usually tell it is like hurry up offense or like
Hmm.
2 minute warnings, because then it's basically on the quarterback. It's like they're kind of taking the lead. And that's where, like you said, that's when Stafford lit it up.
Yeah.
When he was on the Lions, even if he had bad coaches, it's like that was his time to take the offense and do what he wanted with it. And you could tell. And yeah, with Lawrence, you just don't really see that.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, let's go to my bad. I picked the Detroit Lions as a bad. They lost to the Bucks. Normally that's not a bad thing. However, when I give you these stats, this is why it's bad. Uh Number one, Jared Goff threw the ball 55 times in a
Yep.
close game. Jameer,
That's not Campbell to do that either. That's crazy.
that's what I'm saying. This is unlike what made Detroit so good last year, right? So he passed the ball 55 times in a close game. Gibbs only ran the ball 13 times. He averaged almost 8 yards a carry. And then Montgomery only ran the ball 11 times. He averaged almost 3.5 yards a carry. They had twice as amount of yards them. They had 463 yards. The Bucks only had 214 yards. They had 26 first downs to the Bucks 14 first downs. And then they were like one, if I can find it, 1 of 7 in the red zone.
Yep.
1 of 7. It's just not like I don't mind losing close games, especially to a team that's pretty solid like the Bucks. You have your off days, but in the way that they lost, where they to me dominated the game, they dominated it in every statistical thing except turnovers. They had one more turnover and points. And
Yep.
it's like, what are we doing? So I don't know. You got to maybe down in the red zone. They got to run the ball a little bit more. I think part of it, they're getting a little too pass happy with Goff, and they got Williams and Brown and Laporta. Even though Laporta doesn't seem in the first 2 weeks hasn't been featured in the offense quite as prominently as he was last year, which I don't understand that. So I got to give them a bad because I just thought the way they went into the game, their game plan, and then not adjusting to what was working, that was just a bad performance by the Lions.
Yeah, and it's sad to think how close they were to being 0-2 right now, which is unbelievable. I mean, they got outplayed by the Rams week 1, and they were really fortunate to get it into overtime and win that, which is kind of scary. I just had a thought, like I want to get your thought on something because you're a Lions fan. I love what they're doing. I love Campbell as a coach, but an adjustment I think he needs to make. I want to see what you think about this. So when he took that job over, we all know where the Lions were. I mean, they're absolutely dreadful, horrible team, and he wanted to kind of like, hoorah around the players, and we're going to do anything we need to do to win this game. And he would go for it on 4th down or do onside kicks. He'd do fake punts and fake field goals and anything they had to do to be like, we're going to try to win this game. We're going to be aggressive. Which that's what you need to do in that situation. But now you're no longer the hunter. Now you're the hunted. Now you are a good team. You have good players. You have good scheme, and you're expected to beat most teams. You're gonna be favored. So I think at some point you need to kind of like lay off a little bit of the fakes and like trick plays and just stick to being the running offense, tough physical type team that he wants to he wants to have them be. Because there's a lot of like already, I didn't watch the whole game. I only watched maybe the last quarter and a half of it, but he needs to just take field goals. If he's down there and it's 4th and over 2, it's like, take the points, man. It's like, this isn't you at 1-15 against the Niners where you gotta like take every chance in the world to have a chance to win. It's like, play it by the book, so to speak. I mean, do you think that that's something that he's got to change a little bit now?
A little bit. I think, it's sort of like why defenses blitz, for instance, is oftentimes because they can't find pass rush, right? Like with their front four, right? But if a defensive coordinator becomes like a really good defensive coordinator because they're good at like scheming their blitzes and stuff like that, they won't stop blitzing just because the team gets good, even though they might find good pass rushers. You know what I'm saying? So
Sure.
I think there's a balance, right? They don't have to blitz maybe as much. And I think you're right about that. which was the strange part because they were 3 and 5 on their fourth down conversions. But where I do agree with you, I the trick plays, I do think that needs to slow down a little bit, and they need to just be more strong and upfront about these things. Like, hey, like the way they ended a game against the Rams, they're like, we're just going to hand the ball off. And you guys are just not going to stop us. I thought maybe that would have sort of like ticked in them, like, okay, well, we're not going to let this happen again. This is what we're going to do in week 2. And they didn't. They went on and passed the ball. I wonder if that has something to do with it. No, I mean, I agree with you on that point. I do think a little bit of Ben Johnson proving that Goff is a good quarterback has something to do with like this idea, because like there are some people who thought Jared Goff will be MVP this year because they play 14 games in a dome, but he hasn't been great passing the ball 55 times, and nor should he be, because that's a lot of time to ask any quarterback to pass the football. So anyway, I do agree they need to step back of it a little bit, but he still has to have some of that, because that's what makes him a great coach, and that's what gives his team the confidence that he believes in them, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so bad Lions. Okay, let's go to our ugly. You want to give me your ugly?
Thanks so much for watching this clip of the Box Score Sports Podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter or X. And we'll talk to you guys real soon. See ya.